Welcome to the latest episode of the Low Production High Value Show, a show for and about entrepreneurs.
On the latest episode of the Low Production High Value Show, a conversation with Chris Downey, owner of Reverb Strategic Marketing. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thank you for the invite.
Good to have you here. Well, let's jump right into it. You've spent time at enterprises like IBM, Dell, and AMD in a social and digital marketing role, but you've more recently been spending time as a fractional CMO with startups and founders. And I wanted to kick things off by asking you, kind of bridging that perspective of how you see founder-led demand creation different from maybe some of the traditional stuff you did at Dell and IBM and AMD.
You know what I think what's interesting about it is I don't think it's all that different, although maybe the scale is different. I've seen where founders, are starting a new company, and typically they're going to be doing founder-led sales in almost every case I've seen. But, they leverage their network quite a bit to get those first few sales. But when you really start trying to scale up to that first million, that's when there's got to be some other lever that you're pulling. And a lot of times people default to purchasing leads and things like that, and hint that usually doesn't turn out very well when you don't have a full-fledged marketing team yet.
The Glengarry leads?
No. But once you start actually building some sort of thought leadership around the thing that you're passionate about, right? And I've yet to meet a founder who started a company because they weren't passionate about what they were doing. They just wanted to come and work 12-hour days, 7 days a week. But I mean, typically it's like there's something they're passionate about, and getting out there and having a steady stream of thought leadership and content talking about the problem that they're trying to solve, talking about what their customers are dealing with on a daily basis, can help you scale those early sales and start to kind of like build out that brand without having to build a brand. But the same thing works at big enterprise companies. CEOs at big companies, their level of thought leadership can move the price on stock. So I think it really does scale. But when you are, a small operation just getting started, I think it's imperative. I don't think you make it out of those early stages without it.
I agree with you, and often have felt that there's the passion of the founder or the passion of the entrepreneur can carry them a long way, and that it can become somewhat infectious to the people they talk to and be a catalyst for sales. But if the founder isn't, I don't want to say born salesperson, but has had a history in sales, is it more founder-led influence versus founder-led sales? And also as they get busy and perhaps their passion dissipates or they've run out of friends and family, do you get to the point of coaching them about like turning them into closers? I'm just wondering what your take is on that.
Yeah, I don't know. Sales is hard. Sales is humbling. I just started my company earlier this year. I've never done sales before. And of all the things that I have done that have been first, sales is by far the hardest.
It's humbling.
It is. It is. You get used to hearing no a lot and not taking it personally, but also taking it and trying to learn from it. And I think that's one of the things with founder-led demand creation, where let's say you go out and you have 5 sales calls a day and you get up to 100 calls. I'm not going to do the math on how many days that is, but you get to that point, you've got 100 pieces of feedback. And let's assume that you're actually recording all of those calls and having ChatGPT analyze them. That's great, but that's 100 people. 100 people you probably already knew before in some way, as opposed to, let's say you've been in the job market for 20 years, 15 years. You maybe have several thousand connections on your LinkedIn. You're going to put that content out onto LinkedIn and get feedback from hypothetically thousands of people every time you post. Now that leads to all sorts of other discussions about the LinkedIn algorithm and all that, but the opportunity.
But silence is also feedback, right? Like if you hear nothing.
Yeah. And,
like crickets.
and here's the thing, like if you're trying to sell to the C-suite, right? those people aren't commenting on LinkedIn on a regular basis. They are the silent majority that's out there lurking, and maybe they'll throw a like or a celebration to your post. But more often than not, what it's going to turn into is they're going to have a need. They'll have consumed your content for a given period of time. They'll have a need, and they're going to drop into your DMs, right? The likelihood that they're going to come into a comment and say, "Hey, Andrew, I saw your post. I want to buy from you." Who would do that? So it is a very non-linear approach, but
If we could only dream of that happening.
but I think a lot of this, it really comes down to, kind of rethinking what the sales funnel looks like in 2025, soon to be 2026, is that, we used to dump a ton of leads into the top. SEO was really important, still is, but it kind of whittles it down until you have a number of qualified leads that marketing can pass off to sales. Sales finds hopefully valuable and finds some needles in the haystack there that they can convert. But what we're dealing with now, especially post-pandemic, is more of like a circular funnel. And why I describe it like that is people are consuming content wherever they want to consume it, whenever they want to consume it. So it's less about saying, okay, I've heard people say this as well. Like nobody goes, you know what, I think I'm ready to join the sales funnel today. And I'm going to go you consume this content over months or even years before you're ready to purchase. And at the point where you're ready to purchase, if that's the point where you're going to try and get in front of this person, you've already lost. So it's about creating demand where in this circle, wherever people are consuming content, you need to pick and choose the platforms where you're going to show up. You need to be posting regularly or having content that is readily available. And they're going to learn to trust you. They're going to learn to trust your brand over that time. And when they come into market to buy, and I've seen numbers that at any given point, 5% or 10% of your ICP are in the market to buy. It's probably closer to 5. But at that point, that is where they've already got an idea of like the top 2 or 3 people, and sometimes the only person that they're considering buying from. And so that's where I talk a lot about demand creation. And that is creating demand through influential content on whatever platforms and means that people who you're trying to sell to want to consume it. So if they want to be on LinkedIn, if they want to be on Instagram, if they want to be on Reddit, it doesn't matter. You have to show up in some way. Goes for the LLMs as well, right? Making sure that you've got optimization there and SEO. And then at the point where they're ready and they're coming to look for you, you got to be able to capture that demand. So that's where your traditional, like very solid lead capture on your website, or having a book a meeting with me link on your LinkedIn. And then it moves on to demand conversion, right? And in a world where you've already done 90% of the heavy lifting through your content over the course of months or years, and they come in and they self-select that they want to come talk to you, the sales process becomes much easier. So less about selling and more about defining what that purchase looks like.
Well, and being the best answer. I mean, you make me laugh about that. I now consider myself at the consideration phase. I'm ready to be closed. No,
I'm now product aware.
But does lead me to this question. It was a comment I heard recently about as AI is being used more and more for search, that the use of AI suggests that the people using it are even more qualified if they do reach out to you or contact you or some sort of lead capture related to it, because they've been having foreseeably a dialogue with AI about you, getting questions answered. So it's not the same as they just downloaded an ebook that they scanned, versus they might have been pitting you against competitors. They might have been asking, questions, very targeted or specific questions about you or about them and their business in relation to what you do or don't do or offer, etc. And I'm just wondering what your take is on that.
This is such an interesting question to talk about, right? LinkedIn is full of content right now telling you that you're not doing it right, or if you're not doing these 5 things that you're not. Come on, like I have met, I can count it on one hand, the number of people I've talked to that are such experts in AI generated search results and LLM search optimization. The people are out there, right? But um, those answers are being developed on a daily basis. I
Yeah.
look back at the early days of SEO, and once upon a time, I was an SEO expert. I'm not anymore, but once upon a time, and there was so much stuff that they're like, oh, you got to do this gimmick and that gimmick, and here's the thing that Google wants today. It's developing probably even faster than SEO, right? So you've got engineers on the back end trying to make hopefully a good user experience. And so what is working and not working from day to day changes, but what it all comes down to, and it's very simple. You have to have engaging, interesting, compelling, entertaining content, period.
Well, I'm finding, even just anecdotally asking different people, search using ChatGPT will say, search this term or this phrase. And I might ask 4 people thinking, I'm hoping that my company shows up in the results. And for some it does, or for some it shows up not as I expected, or for others it doesn't show up at all. And it's because I think even more so than with SEO, that the way each person is using AI is influencing the results that they get.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to your point, we used to know how to appease the Google gods, but the
Yep.
AI gods seem to be indifferent, changing by the day, presents some challenges. And thankfully, we've had inbound leads come from AI, and for which I'm grateful, but I'm not sitting complacent because I don't know what next week will bring. So,
Hey, and you've probably gotten more leads from AI than you think, right? Because they do their search and then they end up on your website because they just type in the address, or they call your phone number, or they go look you up on LinkedIn, and there's no attribution there, right? But again, they're doing research on whatever platform they want to use. I'll give you an example of how I do AI purchase research. My wife and I, every year, we sponsor a family for charity for Christmas, and we get a shopping list from the mother and typically 2 or 3 children that we're sponsoring, and they have very vague like guidance on here. This, I would like a doll. I would like makeup. And so the mother wanted an air fryer. I don't own an air fryer. I haven't done any research on air fryers. We were in Target and I walked down the aisle that said air fryers. Do you know how many air fryers are even at a Target? I mean, there were like 30 or 40 different versions, I swear.
I know
And
there's a whole channel dedicated to air fryer and air fryer recipes and cooking on TikTok. So
absolutely.
it suggests that there's a lot going on.
And so I opened up ChatGPT and I said, I'm looking to purchase an air fryer. I'm standing here at Target. Please go to the target.com website and do research on air fryers that are good for a family of 3 in this price range, and give me the pros and cons for each. And it broke it down right there. It gave me 3 of the best options. It didn't do a great job at bringing in the Black Friday pricing. So I just went up to the 3 that it recommended, plus a couple others. I took pictures, including the price tag. I said, okay, based on these 5, pros and cons, this one again for me. It broke it down, got it to the last 2. It asked me a couple of questions, and then I picked it. 5 minutes. I went from never having researched an air fryer in my life to becoming an air fryer expert. I don't know.
Well, it can distill a lot of noise. I mean, I was on a Zoom call with someone, and they were about to go live on LinkedIn, like literally 2 minutes ahead, but it was going to be on Zoom, pushed live to LinkedIn. And there's a few of us that were early, and I knew the person who was going to be hosting the live, and they were like, it's not working. Do you know how to connect to LinkedIn Live? And I said, go to Perplexity and say, how do you connect Zoom to LinkedIn for a LinkedIn Live? And what's different from Googling that is Perplexity will give you the supporting citation links but it gives you the answer. It's not saying go pour through these links and you figure it out. It literally gave him the steps.
Yeah.
And he just went live, or not live on the call, but live to us on the Zoom, because the recording hadn't been hit yet. And we were live a minute and a half later before the 2-minute window closed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's a different experience. You get to the answer that you want, or the instructions, or the value is delivered much faster, much quicker. I wanted to jump back to something you said about LinkedIn and lead generation and lurkers. And I don't want to dwell too much on LinkedIn, but this idea of, if you're producing content with consistency, trying to build thought leadership and so on, to your point, it's not necessarily that a senior leader in some firm is going to like slip into your DMs, but if you start seeing signs from your profile views that your ICP is checking you out, or your ICP is around the same time checking out your website, or whatever outlet, you can capture some data to get a sense of you're reaching the right people. And I just started using RB2B. It's a snippet of code you put into your website. I'm using the free version just to test it. And it literally sends me an export of the person and their LinkedIn profile link who was visiting my website, disclosing their name and so on. I mean, this is them using cookies, allowing the disclosure. Like, cool. And these are my ICPs showing up. So it's a good indication. But anyway, I just wanted to revisit that part of LinkedIn and get your take on things.
Yeah. I mean, I've been thinking a lot about 2025, which was kind of a hard year for a lot of people in every industry, but marketing got especially hit hard, right? But I kind of choose to look at 2025 as this year where everything that we ever wanted as marketers is available to us. It may not be the click of a button. It may take hours of work, or it may just be kind of wiring a few different programs together. But pretty much everything we ever wanted, personalization as one example, the personalization promise that I've heard since day one in my career, it is very much possible right now. It just depends on how hard you want to work at getting to it and offering a level of personalization that's good. I think is one thing. Like it can come off as either bad or creepy or whatever. But
But there's always been that willingness by the user to exchange some data for a personalized experience, to your point, such that it doesn't not just border, but tip over into the realm of creepy.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think there's so much that's available to us right now, but a lot of people choose to be a lot more private and block a lot of that information. But that consistency on LinkedIn, and you can replace LinkedIn with any other platform where your ICP hangs out, but consistency. I always talk about you need to be the person who posts 5 times per week or however many times that your goal is, and be that person. I say that because otherwise it's just another New Year's resolution, right? Well, let me try posting for 5 times a week and it's going to be something I do. No, you have to be the person who does it. And what I have found, and I started this like, probably 7 months ago. I tried posting every day of the week. I wanted to do it for at least a month and see what the results look like. And I was pretty active on LinkedIn already, so I wanted to see what that did to the algorithm and results. I found that probably 5 times a week was going to be the sweet spot for me. And so I said from that point on, I post 5 times per week. And I've scheduled a couple of days where I didn't post because I was on vacation and I wanted to give myself the break. But otherwise, I was that person. And the reason that that's important is it teaches the algorithm, and it also teaches your followers what they can expect from you. This person talks about these things and they post this frequently, and I can expect to get this information or learning from them on a regular basis. Now, again, I think one of the things we touched on a little bit was attribution and how hard that is. Also infinitely possible right now, but also infinitely hard. One of the simplest cheat codes to that, unless you're dealing with thousands of incoming leads, and even then maybe, have a form on your website or in your CRM that the first time you talk to them, how did you hear about us? And write it in. It has to be a free form field. You can't have them pick from 2 or 3 things because they're just going to pick one. But, taking that data and then plugging it into an LLM and starting to kind of, normalize that data into specific categories so that you can determine what works and what doesn't. So your podcast is published as a podcast, but also gets cut up into smaller bits that go on various other social platforms. And if somebody said, well, I saw you on a video, well, that's actually the podcast, right? It's the effort that you've put into the podcast that worked. And if you did normal attribution software, you may not get to that answer as quickly.
I now ask for, I've been a guest on other people's podcasts. And as a habit now, I ask for access to the raw files so that I can turn the recording, because one, I was the guest. I offer the same to you as well.
I'll take it.
The source material, it's less performative because I was the one. I was part of the conversation. I was being interviewed or whatever. And so you end up having just this buffet of content, and it's more authentic. It's more genuine because and less performative because I wasn't hosting and I wasn't leading the conversation. I was being led. And so it makes for better content. And when we promote this episode, we are promoting my guests as the teaser content and less so me, because again, you come across as more authentic, genuine, so on, because you're responding to inquiry. And it makes the difference. The other thing I wanted to ask about was, or mention, and this is not a flex, but do you know Marcus Sheridan?
I do.
So for those listening and watching and who are unfamiliar, he was a co-founder of a company called River Pools. Long touted case study where they started writing blogs, like asking themselves, and they asked their salespeople, what are the most frequent questions you get from customers or prospective customers? Things like, what's the difference between a vinyl pool and a tile pool? And average annual maintenance cost, blah, blah, blah. And so they started writing blogs answering these most common questions, being the best answer. And as a result, they are the most visited pool site in the world, even though they only sell pools in the United States and not in all 50 states. As a result, Marcus, in addition to the River Pool Company, he has his own content marketing professional services firm and is a keynote speaker, has written several books about content marketing. And I happened to see a TikTok of his, and he talked about on their website, they have this thing called the configurator. And you go onto the website and you say, I want tile or I want this. And it's like this a la carte. Oh, you want fries with that? You want, mustard and onions, whatever, although specific to pools. And I went, I have never had that on my website. So I vibe coded using Claude a landing page configurator for my website where people go on and they go, okay, I do want social media help. What kind of help do you want? Do you want organic management? Do you want organic and paid? What channels do you want served? How much content do you want per month? And it's like just radio buttons. And again, not to make this about me, but just the simple fact is that is now the stickiest page on my website. And it's less than a year old.
And I know that guy. I forgot his name. But he's the pool website guy who I've heard him on podcasts and TikTok like a million times.
Yeah. And so it's just a matter of, if you can figure out some mechanism for conveying information and in a sense, and I just got one today. So people go through, they build their ideal program and they hit submit, and it comes into my inbox, and I got one today and I got 2 last week and so in a sense, they come in, they've already pre-qualified themselves for budget and what they want done.
Okay.
And so thank you, Marcus Sheridan.
I'll remember his name now. And
But it's the reason I bring all of that up is to your point about how do you close the loop for attribution to create that demand gen, but as well building the thought leadership that makes people have the comfort to go, I think they might actually be able to help me. But then there's a few more steps for them to follow to, move from that consideration part of the funnel and self-select to the I'm prepared to have a call now.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say from my perspective, because I'm solo, I'm only looking for 2 or 3 clients to work with at any given time. So
Right.
attribution is really just me asking and tracking it in my Notion CRM that I use. When I'm working with founders who are building a much larger client pool, it is about asking that question and tracking it in different ways. Early stage founders aren't always the best at using the right tools or tracking anything. So making sure that phone calls get recorded so that we can query them with our LLMs and utilize that large corpus of data. Again, I go back to, if you go and do 100 different sales calls plus you post 100 times, there's a lot of data there that you can start kind of finding out like what worked and what didn't at different times to bring those leads in that actually converted to sales. And you can get infinitely more complex with the tools and how you're tracking and reporting on these things. But early stages, it's just about closing deals, right?
But I mean, as someone once said to me, revenue sets you free. So, to focus on that. But whether it's related to LinkedIn or Reddit or any channel or channels that you're on, there's the building of the thought leadership. There's showing up as you describe for yourself and how you've approached LinkedIn this year, that consistency. But I want to take it a step further and talk about converting the tipping point from conveying thought leadership to implying trustworthiness and conveying trust and building trust and rapport, even through content, and then how that cascades or translates into that initial Zoom call or discovery call by phone, etc.
I mean, trust takes a long time to build, right? Like, I think that's when I talk to people about, and this is anyone who's in any form of business, if you're on the B2B side of things and you're on LinkedIn doing it, you were talking when we first came on that you're nearing podcast 60 here, right? Like, I'd say you're halfway to having a good idea of what works on a podcast. I mean, 120 episodes is probably where you're going to go, I really know what works now and I can modify from there.
Well, I cringe when I think about my first few episodes.
Don't we all? I mean, I've been in social media since like 2010, and some of the things I posted 15 years ago, awful. But this is why I also talked about you need to be the guy or the person who posts 5 times a week or however many times that needs to be for you. But people need to consume your message. I'll jump around a little bit here, but one of the reasons I really like video, you not only get the way that I think, but you kind of get an idea of who I am in real life, even though it's on video. What kind of personality am I going to have when we talk? I mean, I can be pretty dry, but I hopefully kind of funny sometimes. But I'm also just kind of calm, and I've dealt with a lot of high pressure environments throughout my career. So I want you to see that you can throw a bunch of stuff at me and just kind of, okay, we'll get it done. It works. But that kind of, you can't go out and meet everybody in person all the time. So being able to see that content in video or to read my posts on a daily basis, to get an idea of what my personality is like, how I deal with problem solving, what my opinions are on certain things. I'm not for everybody, and that's totally okay. In fact, I'm only looking for people who like the way I work and want to work with me that way. So if you're a founder and you've got a product that is new and innovative, people may not know what category it really fits in. They may not know if they really have a need for it. So as you're working through product market fit in the real world on LinkedIn, people are getting to know you. They're getting to know your brand, your product, and that is building that trust that over time, when they have a need that arises, that trust has been built. Again, I mentioned this a couple of times earlier, but If at the point where someone has a need, when they come into market to buy, if you haven't built that trust, it's too late, period.
We'll be back in a moment. And now, a word from our sponsor. Social media has become an imperative for almost every business. Discover how to successfully implement an effective social media strategy that is supported and integrated throughout every part of your organization. With this essential book from our host, Andrew Jenkins, Social Media Marketing for Business, Scaling an Integrated Social Media Strategy Across Your Organization, is now available from Amazon or KoganPage.com. Now, back to the show.
Well, and I mean, the cliche is a picture is worth 1,000 words. So, like, how many more words is a video worth? And like you said, you can convey a little more authority. You can show how you articulate things. And there could be just a couple of key words, key phrases like, oh, or the mere fact that you made them think about it somewhat differently than, or maybe you confirmed some assumptions, refuted them, whatever it might be, by the mere fact of a 30-second video.
Well, and you touched on this a little bit earlier, but you get a lot of founders that maybe come from the technology or engineering side of things and maybe aren't as comfortable doing sales. I mean, I've been in marketing 25 years. I was completely uncomfortable doing sales in the beginning. So if you've got somebody who's not really comfortable doing sales and they get on that call where you've got a really warm lead, if that's the first time they're talking out loud about this, it's not going to go well, right? So a lot of this, like every time I join a podcast or host my own podcast, I'm refining how I talk about what I do, how I talk to people about what I do, and how I answer questions about different scenarios. And that gives you the opportunity, just like you were studying up for a dissertation or a job interview or whatever, like you're prepared and you can kind of, instead of having to read from a script, you just kind of vibe and riff off of the things that are in your head. And it feels natural because you've done it 1,000 times.
I remember working with for a startup years ago, and the CEO and founder talked about going on the investor roadshow for the first few weeks, just getting lit up with questions that unanticipated, ill-prepared, however you want to describe it. But by the end, he'd heard virtually every question because people are asking the same question slightly differently or whatever. And it's the same thing, whether it's the first 5 podcast episodes versus the most recent 10 out of 100 kind of thing, night and day. Because again, the practice, and it's the what they call the 10,000 hour situation. This is where founders, if they're not careful, they can be in love with their own technology, but you've got to make sure that you can help others not necessarily fall in love, but make some informed decisions. And which makes me curious about when you were working with founders. Talk to me a little bit about kind of the coaching you've had to do to, I don't want to say make them fall out of love with their product, but to understand the way they feel about it, the way they see it is not necessarily how their target audience is going to see it, and how they have to bridge how they articulate it.
I think I would state it a little bit differently. I would say, don't be so precious with what you think your product is and what you think your messaging is. I've talked with several founders who have been in stealth mode for 6 months to a year, and or they've been having a lot of calls with prospects, and they're not recording any of the calls. This is one of the biggest cheat codes of AI, like for everything that AI has not delivered yet. Having a large corpus of data allows you to make decisions better and more intelligently. And if you have hundreds of hours of calls with your team, with prospects, with potential partners, with investors, having all of those transcripts and being able to query them in a very intelligent manner, like let's say you're 2 years away from even being ready for marketing, please record all of your phone calls now. Because when I come on, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for all of the transcripts, and I want them categorized by, was it an investor call or a customer call or team call? And I don't want you to tell me what messaging you came up with. I want the AI to tell me what it thinks the messaging should be. And then I want to start from there, combining and mashing and really kind of getting to something that's really compelling. Because within all of those calls that you had out there doing founder-led sales where you were really uncomfortable and were kind of tripping over your own words or testing things out, maybe you're really confident and you were actually testing things out, you're going to get all of this feedback from customers. And you can combine it all to spot trends and say, well, when we talked about this one feature, people weren't very interested. But when we talked about this other thing, they really were. And I mean, it's such a huge time saver. You've probably done this as well. I've paid millions of dollars for market research and messaging workshops and throughout my career. Like, as a solopreneur, I run my calls through AI and find out, like, well, what are people interested in? What are they not interested in?
To your point, you can do as you said, if you have this library of transcripts, you can identify where there's a match, where there's a mismatch, the frequently asked questions, where is there a gap between what I'm saying as the founder and what can I learn from the questions being asked that I'm either not conveying or there's a gap in information being provided, etc. Earlier this year, I was literally 2 days before a presentation. I was asked a favor. Can you come on Thursday and give a presentation? And I didn't have one, but I thought I was just going to show up and kind of like on the fly field questions. And they go, no, we want you to spend 20 minutes and present. Oh, so I went on, and it was to talk about the state of social media, like 30,000 foot. Went on Perplexity, compiled 2024, 2025 data about the state of social media, and I gave some parameters. It spit out research. I put the research into Gamma, and I had a 50-slide presentation. I went from 0 to 2.5 hours later having a presentation.
Yep.
That I drove the bus. I specified what I wanted to ignore, etc. But to your point, AI can extract the data that I want, present it in the way that I want. I liken it to it's a new paintbrush, but I'm still the artist. And I don't mean that to sound like highfalutin or whatever. It's still a tool. And I think a lot of people still don't understand, myself included, just where and how these tools can be used to the maximum.
Yeah.
In the work that you've been doing with founders, from your perspective, what do they get wrong about thought leadership, and what advice would you give them to appease that?
I don't know that it's wrong. It is hard to get founders to commit if they haven't done this in the past.
So is it a consistency issue?
It's consistency.
Okay.
It's being able, because especially if you've taken on VC funding, let's say, or maybe you're bootstrapped and it's like you taken out a second mortgage on your home to pay for this. The money is burning, and thought leadership is not a means to immediate returns. It just isn't. It takes time, but it is cumulative, right? It's like investing in your 401k.
Mm-hmm.
In the beginning, the numbers are really small and look like they're never going to be anything. But then all of a sudden, the next thing you see, the number's really, really big, and it's compounding and it's growing like crazy. And you're like, I wish I would have done more earlier. And that's what, for any founder who is not ready for marketing, start there. That is the number one thing. And I do work with a lot of founders, and a lot of times I'll just because I want to help them move forward, I just give them some free advice. But I also do workshops with founders to help them find what their messaging is and what they should be doing and how frequently. That it's not complex by nature. I try to make it not complex. It's about developing those habits and becoming the person who does the thing X number of times per week or day.
The slowly then all at once situation, right?
Yeah.
But flipping that around, when in your time at Dell and IBM and so on, there's an element of, I'll call it brand momentum or brand inertia, where they don't have to be as consistent as a founder of an unknown entity because there's some historical brand momentum. But that doesn't mean that they can become complacent. And I'm just curious to get your perspective from the time you were at those various firms. Was there still like a desire to be, I won't say leading edge, but to be creative, to make sure that content was performing, that people wanted to avoid complacency or appearing lazy with their content.
I think there is more fear that I have seen at the Fortune 500 from executives and posting on social media because it is such a large brand and they can have such a large impact, a level of fear that ultimately led to, in most cases, executives not posting at all. You then get a lot of very senior executives who have dedicated comms people, for instance. And I've worked with a lot of executives and owners over the years that you can get close to getting somebody's voice, but it's never going to be the person's actual voice. It just won't ever be. And so
Close isn't good enough in some cases, right?
The executives that were committed to spending time with a ghostwriter or comms person, or to, best case scenario, write the content themselves, even if they have somebody help edit it and post it for them, but it's in their voice, always worked better. Now, when we're talking brand, right? Like your ability to change the brand of Apple or any other large company like that as one person, unless you're the CEO, and even if you're the CEO, maybe is not going to happen quickly. Now, if you're the founder of your own company and you haven't really developed your brand, that's a perfect opportunity to use your own thought leadership to help develop your brand as you go. You know, one thing we haven't touched on as well is like, what kind of leader are you going to be as a founder? And your content, you can talk about your leadership styles so that when you're ready to hire, people know what kind of leader you are and want to come work for you. But also, just generally speaking, like as you find out what your brand is, and I'm not talking logos and colors, but like what does your brand stand for and what is it all about? Like that, I think, can be forged in those early days of founder-led sales and content creation.
Well, and I think whether it's a founder or a member of a senior leadership team of some of the larger ones that we've been talking about, that goes back to this idea of trust, rapport, and relationships. Even the big brands, people aren't buying from the brand per se. They're buying from someone within it that they know and trust. And same thing with founder-led sales. There still has to be this element of they said or did something, but whether it's over a Zoom call or in person or a combination thereof, that made the prospect feel confident to go with that founder and that firm. And people, this even more than ever before, this growing reliance on personal brand. And also, no disrespect to any company, having a LinkedIn company page, it's free, it's a digital outpost, you should have it. But the reach of one or more of your employees could be bigger than the company page will ever be. And if you can build a culture where people want to share about what they're doing at work, or what work is doing, but it's through their lens, you've got something.
I mean, I have built company LinkedIn pages from like sub 1 million followers to over 3 million followers, which is big for a lot of folks and small for other companies. But if you're fortunate to have millions of followers on your LinkedIn page, congratulations. It's going to be really hard for any other company to get to that size, and unless you're OpenAI or somebody like that. But it's those, we're talking unicorns here. Yeah. Lovable probably has 1 million, way more than 1 million followers on their LinkedIn.
If you're not a celebrity LinkedIn page.
Yeah. But I will tell you this from experience, just what you said, like you would think with 3 million followers, we were driving massive amounts of reach and engagement. And we did really well because we were good at what we did, but it wasn't what we thought it should be. And it's gone down and down and down over the years. But again, as a founder who's just starting a company, I wouldn't invest in your brand at all from like a LinkedIn brand page or go out and do a whole bunch of paid branding exercises. I would start with your own voice and kind of test things out in the real world and then go do the other things.
Well, the other thing is, a lot of times, those millions and millions of followers that you're describing is this idea of it's employees, competitors, people who want to work there. And so none of those are necessarily your target ICP.
Mhm.
And that's not a slight against anyone. That's just the reality. Versus your connection or someone who follows you on LinkedIn. It could be a colleague, could be a client, could be a prospective client that, again, saw something in your content, whatever, and wants to remain connected, wants to remain following what you're sharing. And it's just a very different dynamic from that of a company page. And
Absolutely.
as we come to a close, from a takeaway or what you want to leave founders with in terms of advice about thought leadership and consistency, is what would you like to say?
You will grow your business on LinkedIn. Assuming you're a B2B company, it's going to happen on LinkedIn, at least for the time being. And the earlier you make that investment, the sooner it's going to pay off. But it has to be an investment and it has to be a habit. And you have to be really focused about how you do it and pick the messaging frameworks that you're going to be passionate about on your own channel. And don't give up, because it's just like going to the gym, right? It takes a long time to build muscle. It takes a long time to run faster, and you get better at it by practicing. And so you have to do it day in and day out. And it can't be a thing that you're busy with something else so you don't do it today. You have to be the person who stays consistent.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you again for the time we spent today. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Low Production High Value Show. Be sure to give us a rating and subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode. Don't forget to check out Volterra at volterradigital.com to learn more about how they can support your social media marketing.